Alright, so here we are in Xcode with our single view application set up. Then we want to add a navigation bar to without using a navigation bar controller. Alright, so we have the view controller selected, and one thing I want to show you is the top layout guide. Here's the position of the top layout guide. That's where we're going to put our navigation bar. So let's go get one, down to the object library, and start typing navigation, and sure enough there's a navigation bar. We're going to click and drag that navigation bar up to that top layout guide. Next step is to add constraints. Constraints are very important for this to work. So to add constraints, we're going to control click or right click on our navigation bar and drag up to the view in the view controller scene. When we let go, we get the menu that lists possible constraints. We're going to choose multiple constraints, so we're going to hold the shift key down while choosing the constraints. First constraint, again holding the shift key down, is leading space to container margin. Click that. That constraint talks about this left edge. It's going to meet the view's left edge on which it's placed. Trailing space to container margin. Click that one, again with the shift key held down, so you can do both. That talks about this right side. The trailing navigation bar edge will match with the trailing edge of the view it's being placed on. The final constraint we'll set is vertical spacing to top layout guide. Now remember, we already placed this at the top layout guide, but we need to tell Xcode that we want it to stay there. So we're putting that in place. Finally, you can let go of the shift key and go ahead and click Add Constraints. We have our 3 constraints. If we flip the little arrow here in the scene, we get the 3 constraints. The first one is trailing margin equals navigation bar trailing, minus 16. Now in order to go and take a look at this, we're going to go to the Attribute Inspector. The Attribute Inspector shows us our constraint values. I kind of have a personal preference of when I'm setting up constraints, if it won't affect anything negatively, I prefer to see the constraints I'm dealing with in the front. So in this particular situation, we're dealing with the navigation bar, so I really want to see navigation bar in there as the first item. So this isn't, again, crucial in this particular instance. So I'm going to come over here into our Attribute Inspector. I'm going to click the navigation bar trailing portion, and I'm going to select reverse first and second item. Now the first item is the navigation bar trailing, and the second item is the super view trailing margin. We want that navigation bar to be flush with the super view. It's very important for our navigation bar to work. So we're going to come to the second item, super view trailing margin, and we're going to click it, and we're going to deselect relative to margin. In order to make our navigation bar truly flush with the super view trailing edge, we need to change that constant to 0. Type 0 and press enter. And now our navigation bar is truly flush and even with our super view trailing edge. Let's go to the second constraint. That's the navigation bar leading edge and the super view leading margin. Again, we want to remove the margin, so we'll take relative to margin and deselect that. We're going to take that constant and also change it to 0. Finally, we have navigation bar top equal to top layout guide bottom. This one's okay. Now, this looks a little weird because, again, we want the top of the navigation bar to actually extend up to the top of the view. And at this time, it doesn't. It's a little bit under the battery. As a matter of fact, if we click on our navigation bar and we look at the size inspector, we'll see that the navigation bar has a height of 44, which is not what we want. By default, if you add a navigation bar controller, the navigation bar's height is 64. However, what we're doing here now is going to fix that, and Xcode and the system will automatically adjust that height as needed. So let's go back to our identity inspector. In the identity inspector, we have the capability to choose user-defined runtime attributes. Now, there are various attributes that are actually provided by the system as well, and in our case, we want to use an attribute called the bar position. So we're going to click the plus, and it automatically adds an item for us. We want to change the key path name. We double click on it to select it and change that key path name to bar position, camel case, lowercase b a-r, capital P O-S-I-T-I-O-N, and press enter so that it is accepted. Now, bar position, I happen to know, is not a Boolean, but let's go take a look at what it is. Moving up to the menu of Xcode, we can select Window and then Documentation and API Reference. And let's look up that bar position. So B-A-R, P-O-S-I-T, oh, there it is, right at the top. This is an instance property, and it represents the position of the bar. Okay, that makes sense. But we really don't know what to set that to yet. So let's look at the declaration for UI bar position, since we know that's the correct type. We see that type is an integer, and it's an enumeration that has a series of constants to represent it. The constant we want is top attached, but when we're using the user-defined attributes, we can't use the text top attached or even that enumeration. So let's find out what the value is. If we click top attached, we find out that its raw value is 3. So let's go back to our document here, and let's set this type. It needs to represent a number. You'll see that there's no integer type there, but number will work for what we're trying to do. And then value needs to be 3 for top attached. Press enter to make sure that those values are accepted appropriately. Now for the short and quick version, we're done. That's it. Let's go ahead and run our navigation app on, let's choose an iPad Air. I created this as a universal, so let's go ahead and choose an iPad Air and run this and see if it works. So our iPad Air has finally come up, and sure enough, you see the navigation bar with the title here, and the navigation bar goes all the way to the top. Let's try rotating this. We can go to the simulator under Hardware and see that you can rotate the device left and right by using Command and the arrow keys. So let's go ahead and do that. Over here to our device, Command right arrow takes us to the landscape view, and you see that the navigation bar has adjusted itself appropriately for the landscape view. We command left to take it back to portrait, and sure enough, it has adjusted itself appropriately. Let's go ahead and switch to an iPhone, say a 7 Plus, and run that. It's enter to stop the simulator and start the next simulator. Here's our iPhone 7 Plus, and voila, you see that the navigation bar is sized appropriately on the iPhone as well. And then again, let's command right. We go to landscape, and again, the navigation bar is sized and positioned appropriately. Command left, and we're done. That's the simple version. And in most cases, that version of adding the navigation bar will work perfectly for you. Let's go back to our Xcode and stop. In the few cases, I'm going to close this bottom window. In the few cases where this bar position trick will not work, we can connect the navigation bar directly to the view controller, and that will work. So in this case, we've started out with everything. We've positioned our navigation bar appropriately. We've set the constraints appropriately. It's all identical. But now let's remove this bar position because we're not going to use that. There are certain instances where what you're creating won't work with the bar position being added as a runtime attribute. So we remove that. Let's go ahead and close this window since we won't be using the utility window any longer. And let's open the assistant editor for this view. That's going to bring us up our view controller. We're going to add an outlet. So in order to do that, you control click from either the navigation bar itself or its name in the view controller. We're going to control click over to the view controller, and we're going to insert our outlet right there. Now outlet, we'll name it navbar to represent that it is the navigation bar, and its storage type should be weak because it's an IB outlet. Apple recommends that those remain weak because the view that it's on will actually be holding this strong reference to it. So click connect. Let's go ahead for readability and add a space there. Now, our UIViewController though needs to control that navigation bar. Since this is not a navigation bar controller, we need to set it up as a delegate. So UIViewController, comma, UI navigation bar delegate. Press enter. Now we need to go ahead and set up the view controller. So it is the bar's delegate. So I'm going to highlight that. Press enter and take our nav bar. Okay, selected that. Dot delegate equals self. So our view controller will be the delegate of the navigation bar. Alright, but we're not quite done yet. Next thing that we need to do is we need to add the bar positioning method. Now let's put a marker in place and copy UINavigationBar delegate. Space methods. Alright. The method we need to put in place is to position the bar. So func position. See, it comes up with the position for bar, and it returns a UI bar position. This is the method we want. Then let's return that position. Return. Now we're going to return a UI bar position. So UI bar position, if you remember, that was actually an enumeration. So say dot, and we're looking for top attached. There's our top attached, which again specifies that the bar is at the top of the screen as well as its containing view. So accept top attached. And now let's go ahead and run this on our iPhone 7 Plus and see what happens. And there you have it. This slightly longer version works just as well as the other. Let's command right arrow. There we get our landscape. It adjusts effectively. Command left back to portrait. And there you have it. A navigation bar without a navigation bar controller that will work just fine in your code.